Do you want to be a safer pilot? Learn more about stalls, spins, and spirals. Airflow had the opportunity to experience spins in a vintage Aranca Champ.
Hi, I'm John Weigel, member of Chapter 1603, and I'm here today to talk about some, we've talked about weight and balance, and now we're going to talk about stalls and spins, and our goal is to make everybody safer pilots. So here's our little airplane. And it's only natural we should probably start by talking about loops. This is a loop. Tabor goes out, he grabs the Phantom, and he wants to go flying, and he wants to do some loops. So Tabor starts doing loops. He had some bad tofu. He's feeling a little lightheaded. He's getting a little sloppy. So his loops start to, they're not exiting. Let's do it this way. They're not exiting where they entered, right? And he keeps doing this because he thinks he's going to get better, but he's getting worse. So as he gets worse, his loops start to look like this, right? So what he's really got now, he's barrel rolling. So your loops and your barrel rolls, the difference are the barrel roll is now combining a change in direction as you're doing your loop. Now, why bring this up? During this whole maneuver, your airplane is flying. All your controls are working, you've got airspeed, everything else. Now, if I take that loop, or that barrel roll, and I turn it like this, now I have my death spiral, right? Now, what is it? The only reason I want to bring this up is to point out that when you're in this spiral, your airplane is flying. So your airplane is basically doing this, right? So it's following that helix. Generally, the reason I want to spend a lot of time on it is that you see that. You're not going to let that happen. Your airplane, we talked about this last month, your airplanes can be adjusted for pitch so they'll recover from a pitch upset. But if you leave it alone, it will have a tendency to start turning a little bit. And if you totally leave it alone, it'll keep doing that, and it'll naturally start a spiral, generally down. Some will stay kind of in a circle. This is the problem when you get into clouds. This is what kills you when you're not IFR trained or equipped and you get into a cloud, is you won't feel that in most cases. And the reason I want to bring it up is that we say, well, that'll never happen to me. Likely it won't, but what are a couple of conditions that could lead to that? We think about flying into a cloud, right? Loss of the horizon. So you get a really hazy day. There's a couple of situations you should be aware of just to stay out of this. Fog. You say, oh, I'm not going to fly into fog. Hopefully everybody here is paying attention to dew point and temperature when you go flying. So you don't necessarily have to fly into fog. Your fog can form around you. And if you have a hazy day and you're not paying attention to this, say you're going into a cooler air mass, and now you're in the fog and you can't turn around to get out. You've got to be really paying attention to keep your heading straight and to basically stay in control. Because if you start to come out of control, your gauges are all cattywampus. Your airspeed is winding up, your altitude is winding down, your compass or DG is going around, and if you're not prepared for that, you're just seeing a bunch of moving gauges. So it's just, I only bring that up just for that warning. Now, there's another case where you got to be careful. You're flying on top, above clouds, right? You say, oh, no problem. I'll just go down to that hole. How many of you know how tight a circle you can make to get through a hole? You might say, oh, there's the hole. I start down it. I'm in the middle of my hole, and next thing you know, I'm in the cloud because the hole wasn't big enough. Now you're already in the circle, already descending, and you're in the cloud. So that's why it's a death spiral. If you're in the cloud, you're picking up airspeed. You can't necessarily feel this. You're not believing your gauges. And next thing you know, it's raining pieces of your airplane and you out of the sky. So that is because your airplane is still flying. It can still accelerate, pick up speed, and
if it was trimmed properly and you let go, it'll recover to some extent.
It may, but the problem is probably you're so far into it, then and you know it's one thing to think about it and be talking about it in nice clear weather, but it's another thing if you're in the soup, and like I say, your gauges are.
Interesting problem, but if it's pitched to fly level and you let go, it can slowly pitch up, even though it's turning.
Yeah, but the problem, no, see, it probably will not, and the reason is when you start the turn, you start a descent, you've upset the pitch. Back in the model airplane days, the first RC airplanes were rudder only. The way you did a loop was to put into a turn, and it would spiral down and pick up speed, and then you go to neutral, and it would do a loop. So you can't guarantee that. It may happen, it may not. I'm not going to get into that. You have to look at your specific airplane. Yeah, but your biggest problem is your airspeed, because you're going to be going so fast. You've got to be very smooth to pull out. You do have to stop the rotation and then recover from it. But I don't want to dwell on that, because you hopefully will not get into that situation, because you can see. Just beware of what the conditions when you can not, when you can't see what you're doing. All right. I want to make sure people, oh, by the way, your spirals and spins, a lot of people mix them up, because especially if you're looking at it, some people don't see the difference. But that main difference is that your airplane, as I said, your airplane is flying. And this is just, it's basically that bringing that up is just to point it out. That's all. It's just to say that a spin, now we're going to get into that. All right. And we're going to talk about that too. All right. So this is our airfoil. This is our wing. And when we talk about this, that's just one slice through this wing, right? Your whole wing is making lift, and it'll vary a little bit across it. But it's making lift because you have an angle of attack. So these lines represent the direction the airplane is moving. It's not indicating level over the earth. So your airplane is moving, and the airflow looks to the airfoils looks that way. The airplane's moving this way. It's got a little bit of an angle up. That's producing our basic lift. Now, terminology. So my chord of my wing is the tip of the leading edge to the tip of the trailing edge. That line is the angle that's used for your reference for your angle of attack. So that's represented here. A camber is if you measured your midpoints, there'd be a curve in here. The camber is what's giving your airfoil its lift characteristics. And that can vary quite a bit. You can have a wing that looks like this, or a wing that looks like this. But at the end of the day, your angle of attack, even with this funny looking airfoil, I'll just better that way. So that's basically the line that would be your angle of attack for that airfoil. I bring this up because the shape of that airfoil, this is an actual NACA airfoil that we use on gliders, but it's the same as if you deflect a control surface, right? If you're going to change that angle. So we're flying along. We're doing fine. We decide we're gonna practice our stalls. So right now, our airplane. It's nice. It's looking like that. That's the airflow over the back of the wing. And we're going to start bringing the nose of the airplane up. So, stall, it's too tight. Stall is not a function of airspeed, although airspeed is used to indicate it. It's a function of angle of attack. So, for our little airfoil here, this will be our stall angle. It's about 20 degrees, and that's generally kind of what most of your general aviation airfoils fall into. That's your... Whoops. Hang on. That's my good flow. Okay. There we go. Okay. The air can no longer stay attached. I'm going to get into this lift stuff in just a minute. We've got this angle, and the reason I made this thing removable is to make a point. When you got this, your airplane's moving this way, you've got a very high angle. Doesn't matter what the airspeed is. If you hit that angle, you're going to wind up in the stall, right? Now, we believe everything is true, correct? So now, if I do this, everything is still true. So the point I'm trying to make here is that your stall doesn't have anything to do with your level flight. Your stall has to do with angle of attack. So if I'm going down and I hit that angle of attack, I'm going to stall my wing. That'll become important in a minute. Now, where does our lift come from? If we think about this, Rob said it last week, the air's coming from underneath, it's pushing the thing up. Why is it all turbulent behind there? So we're kind of prejudiced. Every time we look at this stuff, we're looking at it from the airfoil's point of view. Now, think of it from the air's point of view. We have this glob of air out here, right? So the glob of air is not moving across the wing. The wing is coming through the glob of air. And the effect is the same. But if I come through this air, this glob of air, I'm an air molecule. I'm just doing my air molecule stuff. I'm having a good time. All of a sudden, this big-ass thing is coming at me. And it hits the bug in front of me. Now I know what's inside that. But all I'm doing is I'm being pushed up as this thing comes by. So as it's coming by, I'm an air molecule. It pushes me up, and then I want to stay down. Now, air, you cannot have a glob of zero air pressure sitting out here unless you have a container around it, right? So the air, you can't artificially have negative pressure. It's got to adjust. It's got to do something. Now, luckily, air is compressible. You felt that when you used a bicycle pump, because as you're pumping more and more, that air you have to compress it before it can actually push the higher pressure in. So your air is like a spring, right? So your air can be pushed and pulled a bit, but it only goes so far. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where your air can't stay associated with the other air molecules around it, and it starts to get really turbulent because the air is going to come in from other directions, and that's what this turbulence is. So you're kind of temporarily, if you look at one slice of the air, you're creating a low pressure, or at first it's a high pressure because you're coming through, it's got to go over the airfoil. As the airfoil goes by, it drops back down again. Now, so when this wing is slicing through nice and clean, it just squeezes and everything goes right back together. But as it comes through like this part is compressing, and this part's generally coming back down where it belongs, but eventually it kind of comes apart. A good example of that is I assume you've all paddled canoes. So if you think of your canoe paddle as a wing, with a 90-degree angle of attack. When you're paddling it like this, high pressure's on this side, and you see the water coming, trying to fill in behind it. So that's essentially what's happening here, is your air has to come in and fill back in that space that's trying to be caused by this springiness, if you will. And
on top of the wing is at a much higher speed.
well, it gets confused because the molecules are not tied. They're attracted to each other, but they're not tied together. So they start to, some will come from behind, some will come from above. But as I said, you can't have, for any length of time, a different pressure of air in a small bunch. We're not talking about weather air masses. We're talking about local stuff, this glob of air you just flown through. So a little more angle of attack, or we can call it here. This angle of attack is now stalled. Your wing is no longer creating sufficient lift to keep the airplane up. You've got a lot of drag. You can try and increase the angle of attack. It's not going to increase anymore. You're done. So we bring our little airplane in, and you come up, you're doing your stall. There's no guarantee one wing is going to stall, the wings are going to stall equally. They can, and we'll talk about rudder corrections and that kind of stuff later, but as it comes up, one wing is going to stall a little before the other. Now, you say, okay, great, I'll just lift it up with the aileron. So what I want you to come away from, important here, is if you go on YouTube, you'll see all the corrections for how to get out of spins and stuff. Here's the why. So we come in, I'm going to need to get on this side. So I'm going to pick up the wing with my aileron. I'll just put a little down aileron in. Watch what happens when you put that down aileron in. What happened to our angle of attack? You've done two things here. You've changed the wing airfoil shape. That your angle of attack is just increased. So you have now deeply stalled that wing. There's nothing you can do. Your aileron is not going to pick it up. And the opposite things happen on the other side of your airplane. You've actually helped it. Yeah. So now your airplane is going to come down, and it's going to come down. It's not going to be a spiral. It's going to be nose down, because you're coming this way with your stall angle of attack, and it's going to be spinning like this. So that's the difference in your spiral and your spin. Your spin is a maneuver where your airplane is rotating and coming down. The wings are stalled. You can't change that with your ailerons. So why use rudder? Okay, now let's talk about the rudder for a little bit. Planes you can fly with elevator and rudder only. You don't need your ailerons. Your ailerons, we're going to talk about air coups at the end of this, by the way. Your rudder works by, if I can take this airplane, so right now if I'm flying straight at you, it looks like this. If I yaw it a little bit, it looks like this. If I'm yawing to the left, that left wing now has something introducing a roll to it. If I yaw it to the other direction, the roll goes the other way. This is a little free flight glider, so it has a lot of dihedral, which is what this angle is. You see the model glider guys, they actually have polyhedral. Your airplanes have a little dihedral in them. It's usually degree, 2 degrees maybe. Champ might be the most obvious one because it looks like the wings are sticking up. If you look at Bonanzas, air coups, they have a lot of dihedral. Because, well, a high wing airplane will have a natural built-in dihedral because of the fuselage side. Even a flat wing, if you turn it, will effectively, because you have an angle of attack, will effectively have that effect. So it is your rudder that is allowing you to come out of that spin, to stop the rotation, because you're not changing your angle of attack. You've got the airflow going over the rudder. Now to tie, and the reason I'm going through this is I want you to visualize why the aileron doesn't work. Because everybody says you don't use aileron, you use rudder to get out of your spin. This is why, because your aileron can't do it. You can't go beyond the angle of attack that the wing is stalled at. Now, to tie this to our previous discussion, this rotation in the spin will go through your center of gravity. So if I have a center of gravity that is where I want it, I'm coming down like this. I still have some airflow going over that tail. So I still have some rudder. I still have some elevator. I can still make changes. If my center of gravity is back, now my spin's going to get flatter. It's going to be more like this. And you've heard the term flat spins. You see it in the movies and stuff. Basically, if I had a perfectly flat spin like this, I don't have any airflow over the tail. My rudder won't work anymore. My elevator won't work anymore. This is where we get into with the weight and balance that we had, where if we get that aft CG, first of all, you're not going to get the feedback from your control stick telling you that you're getting near a stall. And once you're in the stall, you might not be able to get out of it. That'd be generally very far aft. But your airplane designers have designed that CG range that you're going to stay within so that you don't get into that condition where you can get a flat spin. Now, you're coming down like this. By the way, if you haven't done a spin before and you're not sure about it, there's three things that happen. Your eyes get the size of dinner plates. Your seat cushion disappears between your butt cheeks. And you panic and pull back on the stick. Because even though you're nose down in the airplane, I swear to God, you'll look like you're looking straight at the ground. You think you're going perfectly down. Now, to recover, you've all seen the YouTube thing. You stop the rotation and you start to pull out. Now you're in a realm that you're not used to. Your airplane is moving much faster than it did before. It's still picking up speed because you're still going down. What do? You got to be patient and smooth and bring that airplane out. If you
not picking up speed in the stall figure.
No, but as you're recovering, you've stopped the rotation. I'm sorry, you do have to drop the nose a little bit because you've got to get rid of that angle. But now let's say you're pointed this way, and you've got to pull out smooth. If you haven't experienced it, you might panic and you yank on the stick. You got this again at a high airspeed. This is your accelerated stall. This is what people don't usually get. I don't know if they get this in flight training. I don't know if they do accelerated stalls. I think they do departure stalls and they do the stalls at idle. But your accelerated stall, it's going to do the same thing, but it's going to do it faster. So you could start this all over again. This is assuming you're up at altitude. If you're down near the ground, the reason stalls are a problem at the ground, you don't have room to recover because the airplane needs to get its airspeed back. You're probably going to crash, but you can get into trouble if you're up circling around. You're looking at, back to the nudist colony on the beach. You're looking at all the people on the beach with no clothes on, and you're turning. You're not paying attention. You're getting tighter and tighter and tighter until you stall. Now you might still have enough altitude to recover from it, but the thing I want people to be aware of is that this is a problem when your airplane is the spiral. Your airplane is flying. The spin. Your airplane is not flying until you can stop the rotation and recover and get that angle down again so that you can start flying again. For those, I don't know how many people go out and practice. You can practice slow flight. I suggest that strongly. Practice your slow flight. If you're nervous about this, start a little higher you don't have to go right to your stall speed, but start a little higher, get used to it, work your way up, and then once you can get into real, if you want to demonstrate this, you get into a real stall, and as the nose is coming down, if a wing starts to drop, use your rudder to pick it up. And there was an answer when Steve asked why you'd want to get your tailwheel rating. I didn't think of that. That's a useful skill that a lot of people don't have if you're flying airplanes that need a lot of rudder correction. So what you do is you go out, plenty of altitude, pull back, engines at idle, pull back into a full stall, and let it keep it level with your rudders. This is an exercise the tailwheel guys use to get your rudder skills up, and it's a useful exercise for anybody actually because of falling leaf, because you're theoretically you're kind of looking like a leaf coming down, but
It has to be absolute 100% instinct that you raise that low wing with your feet, and
Yep.
it doesn't come without training. If you don't have the training, it will be just the opposite. You'll use the stick.
Yeah.
So it's ingrained into your fiber that when you raise that low wing with your feet in a tail dragger.
Well, any airplane. That's why even the Sky Rangers, whatever, when you're getting the confidence, get out there and work on this. And the reason you want to practice your slow flight is you want to recognize, you want to be able to get to the point where you can feel the controls are going to get mushy. You want to get to that point where you can feel that wing wanting to drop a little bit and use your rudder to correct it. If you are in a coordinated turn, it's slow flight above stall speed, but very close to it, your airplane still has full control. But when you reach that stall angle, as soon as you add that aileron on the low wing, you're going to be in trouble. So to Rob's point, you want to practice this enough that it becomes second nature. You don't have time, especially if you're in a landing pattern, you don't have time to think about this stuff. It's got to be built in. And if it flies, there's some area that you can get close to or into that'll give you trouble, and you need to train so that your staying out of that area is instinctive. And going back to the weight and balance thing, your flying wings, your trikes, they still have a tail. It's just built into the wing aerodynamically. It's just you don't have much CG range because you don't have this length of tail levering it. Sounds like we're getting more young flight instructors out there that don't understand stalls. They might know the actions to get you out of them, but they don't know why, and they're afraid of them. What I want to drill, the point I'd like to drill home, especially to the young pilots that either have little experience or are still students, find an instructor, veteran guy, Tabor, Jay, somebody that knows and will let you experience this. Find someone who will really exercise stalls. Spins used to be, back in the 50s, spins were part of your instruction. They actually had you spin. And the good instructors would actually have you spin, and they'd expect you to stop the spin on a particular heading. Yeah, so they don't do that anymore because, it's too dangerous. But the problem is, we can talk about this all day long. Everybody can say, I understand. Until you're looking at the ground in a panic situation, you really don't know how you're going to react. And it has to be, to Rob's point, instinctive. You have to just do it. And the only way you're going to get to that is to practice. So if you're nervous, I would recommend, like I still do it in Champ, go out, fly slow, wallow around. You do this, because you're hauling back on the Champ. You can't trim all the way for your full aft or your full nose up. My arm's tired. I can't. I'm tired of holding aft stick all the time. But get used to that. Do this folly, and you're going to do this in the Cub with Tabor, I'm sure. But get your rudder skills up. Use the falling leaf to get your rudder skills up. Another good exercise for that is to point your nose at a heading straight out, roll aggressively back and forth, keeping the nose pointed at that point. These are all things that, yep. Yeah, even your modern airplanes, if you're aggressive enough you can't get rid of all adverse yaw when you're rolling. So if you're aggressive, you can still get the nose to swing. For those who haven't done it, Cubs and Champs are great for this. You tell someone to crank the wing over and don't touch the rudders, and that nose as you crank, that nose will swing, and it's really dramatic. So lift doesn't come for free. Lift comes with drag. So in addition to let's get rid of our stall angle. Because I've done that, it's going to do the opposite it's going to do the opposite. The rolls, say the rolls to the left, your nose is going to swing to the right because you have more drag on the wing with more lift and less drag on the wing with no lift. So it's going to swing the opposite direction. Your rudder is how you keep everything coordinated. You could actually design an airplane that doesn't need a rudder to keep a coordinated turn. All you got to do is make the rudder super tall, and it'll follow you like an arrow has feathers on the back end. But that's not practical. But so your adverse yaw, now the way they design that out on modern airplanes is they adjust the tapers of the wings, they change the airfoil from root to tip, and the wing has a twist in it. So the whole thing is to minimize that so that people can basically fly around without using the rudders. And that works. Everything works fine as long as you're flying under normal, regular, everyday conditions. It doesn't fall apart until you get into extreme conditions. And I'm a proponent. Your airplane, you need to know everything your airplane, the one you're flying physically, can do. You need to know what it's capable of, and you need to know what it feels like when it starts to get in trouble. And this, going back to the instructors, don't go out and do some of this. Don't do a spin by yourself. Get an instructor to do that with you, because the instructor is going to be able to recover if you go beyond your capabilities and save you and your airplane. Talked about spirals. Your airplane can disintegrate because you've exceeded its structure. Your spin, from an airplane standpoint, a spin is a very stable thing for the airplane. Stable in the sense that it's in a steady state now. It no longer wants to change state. If you leave the airplane alone, it's going to be wanting, if it's in level flight, it wants to do something. As soon as it starts to get into a turn, or if it's in a spin, it gets into a state where it's happy. It'll do that all day long. The guy in the pilot's seat, not so much. He's not so happy. But you want to know what your airplane looks like and feels like in those conditions, as long as it's safe, and do it with an instructor that knows what he's doing, because at the end of the day, you want to be able to recognize that the airplane is headed in a condition you don't want it to go in. You want to keep it out of that situation. So if you're doing slow flight, you're getting close to that. You can start to feel it. You start to feel it's mushy and so forth. So it'll make you a more proficient pilot. Rudder skills are always good to have, even if you're never going to fly a tailwheel airplane. These are the things that will save you if you can instinctively know to do something if you get into that condition where you're going to be into a stall condition and you want to keep the wings level.
It can be very surprising to you that you think you're going level, and all of a sudden you're in a very steep.
Absolutely, and that's a good point. So if you're doing the stalls, if you're practicing stalls, you do it with straight ahead stalls. You're doing it with wings level, which means your ailerons are not out of sync. Because if your ailerons are deflected and you go into your stall, one wing's going to have more lift than the other, to Greg's point. Now, you can also, an advanced maneuver would be getting into a coordinated turn and stalling the airplane. Your airplane recovery will be the same. It'll be a non-event. You're uncoordinated in the turn, and your spin is just going to happen faster. And I'm not going to go into there's two different types of spins that you run into, whether you're skidding or you're slipping, which is what happens close to the ground. But if you're close to the ground, you're doomed anyway. You just got to avoid that. And what you want to know is you want to be able to instinctively recognize the feel of the controls, because when you get close to the ground, people are nervous about maybe getting that wing down in a proper bank, because I don't want my wing down that close to the ground. So you instinctively start to skid. So yeah, so you want to. I'm a strong proponent of practicing. When you go up, you don't have to do it for the whole flight, but do something every time you go up that adds to your repertoire of knowledge and skills in your airplane, because you just never know when you're going to be in a condition when you need to use it. And if you're reliant upon the airplane flying itself, it might not be enough at times. been around for 50 years, there's still going to be little things that happen to your airplane over time. It'll have a personality. They'll be similar to, but not necessarily exactly the same as all the others. And I learned to fly in a Venerable 150. Great airplanes, very forgiving. But I really learned to fly when I got the T-Craft, 65 horse. So you didn't have extra power to bail yourself out. Oh, by the way, you can recover from a spin close to the ground. And I think most of you have probably seen it. You've seen somebody take off like a Pitts, do a snap roll. That's a stall spin and an instant recovery. So, but that works because the airplane has the control surfaces to be responsive enough, and it's got the horsepower to do it. You do that in your Phantom, it ain't going to work out so good. They did it in the older airplanes, but they do it in the modern ones. There's a differential in your ailerons. Your down when you turn, your aileron going down travels at a lower rate than your aileron going up. They do that by offsetting where the bell crank pivot point is, so that you might get 20 degrees of up aileron when you're fully deflected and only have 10 degrees of down aileron. And the reason for that is it's to help reduce that effect. Champs, if you look at a Champ, does not have an airfoiled aileron. It has like this edge that kind of hangs down. When you do up aileron, there's this edge that's supposed to hang down into the airstream. And I think my theory is it was supposed to reduce that, but it doesn't work. And the gap in the wing is actually curved to match. And it's to help, that helps with efficiency, and it helps a lot with the adverse yaw, but it doesn't get rid of it. So now the air coupes. So people talk about different techniques of making an airplane. If you want to make an airplane spins proof, you make it stall proof. So the way they did that in the air coupe is you make it so that they've limited the elevator travel, so you can't get to that point where you get into this deep stall. The way they solve the adverse yaw problem, and you beat me to it, they coupled the rudders and ailerons together. So when you deflect the aileron, your rudders are deflecting at the same time. It's like, oh, why doesn't everybody do that? That's the way every airplane should be built. It's like, well, you do give up a little. You give up the ability to get real completely nose up when you want to touch down in a nice 3-point short landing. And if you're crabbing because of a crosswind, your landing gear, you can't uncrab in an air coupe unless you've got the modification to decouple your rudders with your ailerons. Yep, and so what they have to do is they had to design the landing gear so that, like an airliner, you can land in a crabbed attitude and the gear will correct for it. So that there's a reason why you don't have the perfect airplane out there, because there's always something that can't be accomplished when you're trying to solve your problem. So my goal here was I wanted to hopefully demystify stalls and spins a little bit. They are scientific. They're not a magical thing. They're totally predictable. There's all the science behind it. Everybody tells you how to get out of it, but this is the why you want to know this stuff. And the real thing, the two takeaways is do practice that helps your rudder skills, and get familiar with your airplane. Practice with all the different attitudes your airplane's capable of. Don't just bore holes in the sky. Make a purpose. And one of the things I do personally, even if I'm going out for a breakfast run or something, is like I try to make it a point to do 3 landings in that flight. Just because landings when you're doing stuff. Takeoff, you're doing it too, but it's mostly landing stuff. So you make a purpose. You make it so that you're getting something that's adding to your skills each time. Because every time you fly, the air's a little different. Nothing's the same ever, and you can never be too good at the fundamentals. All right, thanks everybody.
Hi everyone. I have an honor to be part of 1603 chapter, and it is an honor to also just be surrounded by such great individuals and pilots. I learned a lot today from John, which has been incredible. I also just learned a lot about the culture within the chapter, which is amazing. Everybody is so open with one another, they're kind to each other, and we all teach each other so much. So that's amazing. Definitely go check out Airflow channel. Flow is incredible and absolutely captures the culture of the entire chapter, along with incredible flight videos. She shares our story, she shares who we are as a team basically, and she's wonderful, so go check her out.